do a Q&A?
Yeah, sure. And I guess, from my side, my interest is also in constructive criticism. So, it's kind of easy to impress strangers, but you guys kind of know me best and you know the work best. So, any criticism is also welcome.
Welcome to stand first.
Yeah.
It's a Heidi.
Now it just feels like unconstructive.
Can you give us a pitch to some extent to funders, potential sponsors? How much do you have to bring into the picture, like the financial comparison? Because you have like the pros and cons of humanitarian versus but do you have to do like any sort of direct economic comparison?
Yeah, I do. And I always try and flip the conversations. The advice I always give to my teams that when funders are talking about a cost, start talking about value, right? Because everybody always thinks that our stuff costs too much, and oh my God, you're a nonprofit, everything should be free, and da da da. When I'm talking with a funder, I'll make those sorts of comparisons on a sheet of paper in front of them. And I'll say, look, you can give us $100 and get all of this, or you can give somebody else $100 and get these few things here. And what's really important to you, and you guys, most of you sat in the sessions that Nila was giving a couple of weeks ago, where she started talking about, what's really important to funders. And for most of the funders, they do care about what those things do and what they can create. They do care about child poverty, right? They do care about literacy. They care about public health. And my arguments to funders are always about how a building is the most efficient instrument to get at all of those. That's not good.
Are you able to capture like a bigger picture, like job creation, that kind of economics?
Yeah, I mean, that field is actually relatively new. I mean, we did a little bit of that in Haiti, and that was because Haiti was foresighted enough to ask for it, and the Flint Bush Haiti Fund was foresighted enough to give us $80,000 to do a real, metrics and evaluation study and, track the jobs created and everything like that. It's real hard to get buy-in, especially in a disaster context. I don't know about, Gretchen Studio and that sort of work, but when you're dealing with a disaster program and you say, hey, let's set aside $100,000 to do a real good monitoring evaluation program so that we can make the case for this approach in the future. It's like, no, put that $100,000 into more bricks and more mortar and everything like that. It's appalling that we would spend money on that sort of thing, in this kind of disaster scenario. I mean, I think that is one of the directions this organization really needs to move over the next 10 years, is that we have to invest in making that case, on an economic level with actual research, because a lot of the things that we talk about, I mean, as much as we have the experience and like we've been there, it's still anecdotal. And if it's not, it still sounds that way to an audience. I'd much rather like hand them a 100-page report and say, for every dollar that you invest in architecture of humanity, you create $7 of benefit. But we have not had the research tools to do that up till now or tomorrow.
But you have a log of how many people went to the training sessions, right? I mean, you don't know, maybe you didn't follow up beyond that, like, all right, a year later, are they working in the construction phase?
Yeah, but at least in the Haiti stuff, that was a specific budget allocation. I mean, we had funds set aside to do all those activities, and it's not easy, it's not just a matter of like, you show up at the job site, count people, and it's, 5 minutes every day, you're done. I mean, it's pretty involved practice. So, I mean, if memory serves, it was about $80,000 start to finish to gather all those metrics, have the profession analyzed, do all that stuff.
Given, are you sure it was 80? Because given the scope of work you're doing in Haiti,
I'm pretty sure it was 80.
that doesn't seem like much.
No, it wasn't, and it was attached to the Flint Bush Haiti Fund grant. So, it was only for the life of that grant.
Which was 800,000.
Well, it was phase 1 and 2. No, you're right, it was. So it was 800,000. So it was, yeah, 10%. Yeah. No, far too little, because I think that, one of these things this organization has always tried to do is to make a case for the value of design, right? And there are certain people, certain decision makers in this world, which will never be convinced by a speech or pictures of sexy buildings or anything like that. They're not going to be impressed until you produce the numbers, until you produce the reports. So in my dream world, when I'm like walking around daydreaming, find a funder that would just give us, you know, $1 million total to do M&E on all of our projects, you know, for 2 years. Because we could take that and we could turn it into a revolution. Alex?
You made a really good case about the benefits of, you know, building locally as opposed to prefab. And, you know, most of the work we did, schools, community centers, and such. So what case could you make for addressing the enormous housing shortage that Haiti faced and other communities face after disaster?
I worked hard in the speech not to make it an either-or thing and not to bash prefabricated housing models. You know, I tried to center it around, you know, this is a decision that our organization made because of our ethics and the goals that we were trying to tackle. If you are trying to tackle the problem of homelessness and you are trying to do it in a short time frame, you know, prefab works great, right? But when I was sitting in meetings with funders, you know, my conversations was always, all right, so suppose you house $500,000 people in the next 12 months, then what? You have perpetuated an aid state. You know, you gave out housing to 500,000 people without any of the economic development or social development or infrastructure around it that would actually make it sustainable, right? So it just depends on what problem you're trying to fix. And if you're trying to fix that very, very narrow problem of, you know, we've got, you know, this many homeless people and they need to be in houses right now. And I'm not saying it's a small problem, I'm saying it's a narrow problem. If you're trying to fix that, then your decision making is probably different. You know, the problem that we were trying to solve is one of long-term development, systemic poverty, and, you know, the problems of the aid state. So that's the approach that we took, and I think it's generally the approach that we take in most of our work.
So do you think there's a good, long-lasting, sustainable way to house 500,000 people within a year?
No, I'm not sure there is, honestly. And, you know, disaster work is always about that tension about, you know, are you going to deal with a short-term problem or a long-term problem? And most people, I'd say 98% of the people out there working in that space make it a false dichotomy. They assume that they're mutually exclusive. We either have to do this or we have to do that. And, you know, I'd like to think that we can kind of do both, right? So, you know, we did a few emergency projects in Haiti where we were dealing with problems that had to get fixed today. And, you know, we're not necessarily long-term sustainable solutions. But this was the ultimate goal. I mean, the ultimate goal is Haiti as, you know, a second or first world nation in 25 years, right? And how do you keep working through that? And if you're always focused on, you know, the latest short-term crisis, then that's never going to happen.
So a good example is Jordan, in terms of what happens when you do short-term solutions. A lot of the refugee camps are now 30 years old. They provided basic shelter, the families had no way to return, so they ended up using the concrete block ceilings that you saw in Eric's presentation, and, you know, they're now dealing with yet another, what could be 1 million people coming in from Syria. 1 in 4 people in Jordan is a refugee, right? And so they have this odd situation where the country itself is being infringed upon by basically short-term solutions to, you know, we're going to house these refugees for a few months, and then, you know, I'm sure about 10, 20, 30 years later, they end up with kind of developing world housing solutions.
There was a slide in here that was like a kind of desert gravelly thing with like white Quonset hut tents, right? That's now Haiti's 10th largest city. Let that sink in. Like in 3 years, it went from those tents to Haiti's 10th largest city, right? Because they put the people out there in this very sort of short-minded way, and, you know, hurricane season's coming, we gotta get people out of Port-au-Prince, or we've got this empty plot of land, we'll just put up all these tents, and people just made it permanent. You know, they went and got lots, and they, you know, kind of started building their own homes, and, you know, even people who were not assigned to that camp started going out there because, you know, maybe their friends were out there, their families out there, and they wanted to be close to their community or whatever it is. And now it's completely sprawled. There's like 60,000 people living there, and there's businesses and commercial corridors and everything else. And the siting is terrible. I mean, it's an hour and a half from Port-au-Prince. It's at the foot of a mountain, so it gets flooded all the time. There's no infrastructure, there's no jobs, except what have been created in that refugee camp. So, I mean, you really have to hold both in balance. You know, you can't be callous and say, all right, why doesn't the, you know, 1 million people that are in camps stay in camps for 3 years while we figure all this stuff out. But you got to do the short-term solution with an eye to what it's going to progress, because otherwise it does become a Jordan. It does become, a Corail.
Another example is If you talk about the Corail camp. So when the NGOs came in, there was a massive push to house as many people as possible. So they ended up deforesting the mountainsides in order to create housing for people down in the lowlands. 2 years later, there was massive flash floods because there was no trees or forests to kind of protect, the kind of downfall of rain, and it washed away all the homes that were created by the NGOs from the tsunami. So it's like, the other thing is when people aren't given sustainable solutions, they don't care about the environment, and they'll just like rape and pillage the natural environment in order to kind of support a built environment. So there's that tension too.
I have a question about how you ended it, kind of like the call to action.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, we hope that you make the right choice, or, the choice is yours. What then, if someone's like, yeah, okay, I want to change, what do you expect of them to do?
Change the world, hopefully. I always end all of my lectures with some sort of call to action, and it's always relatively vague, because I sort of want to create room for people to be inspired and say like, hey, first I was doing this, and now I've seen this, and now I want to do that, right? And it doesn't really matter to me what they do, whether they're a designer or an architecture or a builder or some other space, is if you think about everybody in the world just kind of getting a little bit better every day about how they treat the world and how they interact with the world, that's a world that I want to live in, So, I think the follow-up, I've had all sorts of follow-up. I've had people who wanted to donate, yes, people who wanted to, join AFH and, sell their house and leave their wife and, move off to Haiti. And it's like, okay, calm down. There's ways to change your world, and, I think that is something we lose sight of in contemporary society, right? And we sort of, we see lectures, we see movies, and we think, yeah, I really ought to change the world. And then you get lost in this morass of like, paying bills and